Okay, so we're going to get started here. Thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to the 2020-2021 Seneca Pure Waters annual meeting. Thank you for your support and your care of Seneca Lake.
Yes.
So just give me a second here. So this year's annual meeting has been sponsored by C.S. Burrell & Son Insurance, located on Linden Street in Geneva. We thank Tom Burrell and his team for their continued support over the years. My name is Caitlin Fellow, and as of June 2021, I am the Association Director for Seneca Pure Waters, and I'll be presenting this evening along with our President, Jake Welch, and HABS Director, Bill Rogie. We also have a special addition to this year's annual meeting. About 7 o'clock, Michael Fitzgerald, reporter and author, will give a short presentation titled Heroes and Villains, A Decade of Finger Lakes Environmental Reporting. His account of the last decade will be an inspiring addition to this year's annual meeting. Before we get started, we would like to ask that everyone remain muted throughout the presentation to avoid interruptions. We also ask that all video remain disabled during the presentation to conserve bandwidth. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation, and we encourage participants to use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to ask questions during the presentation or during the Q&A session. We will answer all your questions at that time. And finally, if you need to leave the presentation for any reason, you're able to do so by clicking the red button at the bottom of your screen labeled Leave. Throughout tonight's presentation, we'll take a look back at the Pure Waters fiscal year, which dates June 1, 2020 through May 31st, 2021. Tonight, you'll find that all of the progress Pure Waters has made over the last year has followed the strategic plan laid out in mid-2019 by the Board of Directors. The strategic approach touches on all of our programs, projects, and committee work, and has been updated just recently, reflecting the progress that has been made and the new initiatives we strive to achieve over the next few years. We also hope you will listen in to Michael Fitzgerald's presentation, followed by an exciting new Pure Waters program announcement. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Seneca Lake Pure Waters Association President, Jake Welch. Jake, we're not hearing you. If you're muted, you'd have to unmute yourself.
I'm back. Sorry about that. Hi,
Great.
folks. Welcome all, and thank you, Caitlin, for getting us started. Let's do a brief few minutes of business, as is mandated under our bylaws. That's electing our new and some repeating directors for our board. These are the people who keep our organization going strong, and their names are as follows. For new board members, Steve Bromka out of Romulus, Ron Klinzar out of Hector, Judy Tyler out of Keuka Park, and the board members that are up for re-election include Tom Burrell out of Geneva, Frank Case, Romulus, Frank Diorio out of Himrod, and yours truly, Jake Welch out of Himrod as well. To save some time, I will move to elect all the above mentioned names as directors of Seneca Pure Waters. Bill or somebody out there could give me a second before we take on a vote.
Yep, I second that, please.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Okay. So if you are a Pure Waters member in good standing for 30 days leading up to the annual meeting, please participate in our voting process. On your computer screens, you can do this by taking the poll that will appear in the middle of your screen. In order to submit your vote, you will need to select an answer for all 7 candidates. So you will need to scroll down the poll to view them. We will provide 2 minutes to conduct the poll. Please vote to elect the directors for the class of 2024 now. Have we hit our 2 minutes, Caitlin?
We're about there, so you can continue.
All right. And anybody that voted for me gets extra points going into the future, so appreciate it. All right. All formal business now aside, let's our audience, I want our audience know a little bit about our finances and what we've done on your behalf over this past year. Let's start with the financial stuff. With your incredible support, as well as some belt tightening, we fared well financially, even under the blight of COVID-19. I'm happy to report that on the income side, we had almost a 40% increase, going from 96,736 in the year prior to, in this fiscal year, going up to income of $138,683. And then on the belt tightening end, expenses lessened from $105,000 to $93,297. So all in all, I'm glad to report that we remain fiscally strong in the organization. I'm also proud to report that our membership numbers have also risen. This is the result of a membership drive put together by our association director, Caitlin, our board members, numerous volunteers, as well as the financial support of our friends at the Tripp Foundation. At the start of my presidency, folks, we had some 455 members. Now we have a total membership of some 965 people. That's a big change and a big thank you on our end for all who helped strengthening our organization. So for the past year, many projects have kept us very busy. Many of you are probably aware of our opposition to the proposed expansion of the Greenidge Bitcoin mining facility, a proposal to increase computer usage from some 8,000 to 29,000 computers. Before all that occurred, we asked that an engineer-based thermal study be completed as a way of making sure the extra electrical use and increased heated water from turbines was not going to harm Keuka Outlet, our fish, or the lake itself. In combined efforts with other environmental groups, we were able to get Greenidge to move up the start of its thermal study. Moreover, the DEC and the EPA will be taking a much closer look at Greenidge's air emissions. On other environmental fronts, both Dan Corbett and I have continued our work on the 9-element executive board. We're getting close to the end of this lake-wide study to identify sources of pollution affecting our lake. As you may recall, our organization was instrumental in raising the $250,000 needed to initially launch the 9E program. 9E will be critical to getting the kind of federal and state grants needed to preserve this lake from the threats of excess weed growth, HABs, and climate warming. On a smaller, but still important scale, we also launched our sediment nutrient reduction program this past year. I might describe this program as a mini 9E project designed to stop the same type of climate warming threats. If you're interested, please stick around to hear much more about this at the end of our program and following our upcoming speaker's presentation. You will hear more of what we're doing in reports coming up. It's my hope that you are impressed as far as how we have endured COVID, actually strengthened from it, and where our organization is now heading these days. With your great help, we are definitely picking up our speed in our mission of protecting and preserving this lake, not just for all of us, but those future generations to come. Finally, I would be most remiss to not discuss our volunteers and all they've done for us this past year. We've collected a total of 51 stream samples and 32 lake samples. Our volunteers have put in an impressive 3,400 hours of freely given time in their resolve to keep this lake safe and healthy, including our HABs volunteers, those guys out looking for and locating harmful algal blooms. Their findings have been put on our website, warning those around the lake to be watchful in swimming, letting their pets drink, or themselves drinking or using water potentially poisoned by cyanobacteria. Thank all of you who have joined in that effort, as well as all of you who've in any way taken part in helping our Great Lake Association. Now, before getting to those formal reports, I'm eager to present this, 2 awards that are going to 2 giants who've helped our lake in so many ways. Our first award goes out to Attorney Mark Venuti. Mark's commitment to preserving the waters of Seneca Lake go way back. Actually, Mark was on our Pure Waters board near its startup some 30 years ago. Since then, Mark, who serves as a town supervisor for the town of Geneva, has been instrumental in launching our lake's 9-element plan. As I said earlier, that is a lake-wide scientific study to obtain federal and state grants for our lake. With Mark's help, the town of Geneva has held the $250,000 in funds required to keep the 9-element plan going. Mark was also instrumental in helping hire Ian Smith, our stalwart lake steward. He also has worked ambitiously to obtain funding for the Geneva sewage treatment plant, a facility which is state of the art. Perhaps most importantly, Mark has, for some years now, been heading up the Seneca Watershed Intermunicipal Organization, or SWIO. That organization was instituted to get all 40 municipalities around our lake working together in preserving our watershed areas. And that's some pretty big stuff. Mark, I am pleased to present the Seneca Lake Pure Waters Friend of Seneca Award to you. We commend your willingness to take on some of this lake's biggest remediation efforts. And we were also incredibly impressed by your ceaseless dedication to preserving our lake. As a result of that dedication, we are now seeing what were just lofty ideas before turn into some highly important realities that are preserving our lake. Mark, if you would unmute your computer there, please say a few words. And coming from a fellow attorney, I know that's not an easy thing to do. Just try to do your best. And remember, Mark, we can always cut you off at will.
Well, thank you, Jake. I don't have a lot to say because this is a surprise, but I really appreciate it. And I do want to say that the cooperation and the partnership with Seneca Lake Pure Waters Association has made my job with the municipal organization so much easier. Your people are all top notch, and I 100% support your organization and hope that everyone in the watershed does. And that's it. Thank you.
Good job keeping short, Mark. And we figure the same toward your direction, that you're also top notch, as is your organization. Keep up the good work. Well, folks, our second award is our President's Award. And tonight that goes out to Frank DiOrio. Where do you start with a guy like Frank? He's just super friendly, smart, 100% energy, and completely committed to the quality in every single thing he does. Frank has been a leader of the Pure Waters HABS program going back to its start. Frank devised a 4-quadrant system, developing the team of volunteers who still today scan our short lines for outbreaks of HABs. Frank then took it further, developing a website page, our Bloom Watch report, to let everyone around the lake know, well, website page and Bloom Watch, to let everyone know what's going on with HABs around our lake. Also, those who might see HABs can make reports to our organization using the website that Frank developed. Folks, our HABs program has been replicated by one lake after another as the best program to possibly follow. And the key player for all of that was, you got it, Frank DiOrio. After passing the torch on the HABs program to our board member, Bill Rogie, Frank took on the big task of strengthening our organization's operation areas. He's been the vice president in charge of operations for about 2 years now. Believe you me, he's been shoring up all the weaknesses in the usual high energy Frank way. Frank has also spent hundreds of hours working alongside and training our association director, Caitlin, for her tough job. Frank also helped get our newsletter launched so members can know what we're doing on their behalf, as well as knowing the threats that continue to affect our lake. And if you've ever been to any of our events in the past couple of years, you should know that it's been Frank leading the committee that puts them on. We also owe his wife, Nancy, a great deal of gratitude for letting us steal Frank for so many hours over their precious golden retirement years. Frank will soon be dropping off as our vice president of operations, knowing it's time for others to fill in, like they did when he moved on as being our HABS leader. Well, we pretty much had to find two people to take Frank's place. That pretty much describes Frank in a nutshell. Frank, I and others are super glad you're staying on, albeit as a more normal pace board member, and we wish you good luck on trying to keep your energy down to that level. In wrapping this up, I can't think of a single other person who deserves the Seneca Lake Pure Waters President Award any more than yourself, Frank. Deep and heartfelt thanks are extended to you from our members, our board, our association director, Caitlin, and certainly myself for all of your outstanding work. And Frank, perhaps you could unmute yourself and say a few words to our audience.
Jake, this is quite an honor. Thank you very much for all the kind words in this very special award. After I retired, I wanted to be part of a group that would help our lake, the environment, and my family. Pure Waters was the answer, and it has been a great and rewarding journey ever since I became part of this team. I would also like to recognize those that have worked so hard to drive our progress and results. This includes, of course, yourself, Jake, and our board members, our committees, water quality leaders and teams, citizen science volunteers, all of our members, and of course, our great association director, Caitlin Fellow, and a very special thank you to my always supportive wife, Nancy. Thanks once again for this very special award, Jake, and thanks to everyone for all you are doing to preserve and protect Seneca Lake. Our challenges are pretty immense, but together I know we can make great progress. Thank you once again, Jake.
Well, you're right, Frank. It is a special award, but this year it went out to a special guy. So thank you again for all what you have done for our organization. And with that, enough talking from myself, and I will now introduce our HABS director, Bill Rogie, who's going to fill you in on some of the programs and give you a report on some additional matters. Bill, take it away.
Thank you, Jake, and good evening, everyone. I'll use the next few minutes to review the Pure Water strategic approach. Tonight's presentation will loosely follow this thematic framework. While conducting a strategic plan progress review last winter, the board found that Pure Waters had made a lot of progress on the 2019 version that Caitlin mentioned and determined that an update would be appropriate. The board realigned some goals and objectives, retired objectives that had been accomplished, and added a few new objectives as the organization grows and strives to do more for the lake. There was no change in the mission, vision, or strategic themes, only the goals and objectives were updated. As always, the strategic approach starts with the mission statement: preserve, protect, and promote Seneca Lake water quality. Supporting that mission are four strategic themes. The first is volunteerism and citizen science. Pure Waters is well known for its water quality programs, and a large volunteer corps is what makes those programs work so well. The second theme is partnerships. There are many other organizations that play important roles in improving Seneca Lake water quality. Pure Waters aggressively partners with others to help bring people and organizations together in order to effectively address water quality issues. The third theme is education and outreach. Education delivery takes many forms and is directed at a variety of stakeholder audiences. And finally, having an efficient and well-resourced organization is the critical enabler that helps us manage all that we want to do. This next slide shows how the strategic themes are linked with our new strategic plan goals. There are now 6 goals supporting the 4 themes. Goals 1 through 3 support the efficient organization theme, while goals 4 through 6 support the other 3. I will briefly cover the objectives contained in each goal, just to give you an idea of the activities the organization is pursuing this year. Volunteerism and citizen science aligns with Goal 6, optimize water quality monitoring and research programs. Here we have 2 objectives: to actively monitor water quality programs to maximize impact and efficiency, and develop and maintain a comprehensive list of threats to water quality. The partnership theme is supported by Goal 5, partner and collaborate with other organizations to drive water quality improvement efforts. This goal was expanded quite a lot in the revised strategic plan. There are 7 objectives under this goal: identify and engage with key partners, provide leadership for the 9-element plan, support the Seneca Watershed Intermunicipal Organization, establish a collaborative relationship with other lake associations, track and communicate water quality improvement activities in the watershed, focus on non-point solution sources and stormwater control projects, and finally support PRISM's efforts to control the spread of aquatic invasive species. Education and outreach is the subject of Goal 4, deliver relevant and varied education program content to stakeholders. Its 4 objectives are: implement the lake-friendly living program, develop informational resource tools, develop and deliver water quality educational programs, and engage our political leaders on important issues. We have 3 goals that support an efficient and well-resourced organization. The first is Goal 1, grow and strengthen the Pure Waters organization, with its objectives to ensure a well-aligned organizational structure as we grow, a strong active board, and strong financial controls being in place. Goal 2, increase funding for the organization, is split out by revenue source. We aim to increase funding from individuals, business partners, fundraising events, and grants. Goal 3, increase awareness about the organization through marketing and outreach, is about getting our brand out to our stakeholders. We need to develop a top-notch marketing plan and a robust communication structure. The board is currently reviewing progress on all these objectives. The review will support our budget development cycle, which begins in January and culminates with a new budget next May. After this fiscal year is complete on May 31st, we will do another review to gauge our progress and ensure our annual planning continues to align with our strategic direction. Now let's move on to highlight our activities from the last fiscal year. The core of the association is its water quality program portfolio. Our large citizen science volunteer corps monitors Seneca Lake's water quality. Partnerships are also an integral part of our monitoring programs. As I cover the various programs, you will hear how our volunteers and partnerships work together to achieve our mission. Lake and stream monitoring programs document water quality changes, provide tributary-specific data for the watershed management plan, and help establish priorities. HABS monitoring informs lake users of safety concerns. Invasive species program describe the lake's base ecology and help safeguard against proliferation of new species. Research programs help us understand unique Seneca Lake dynamics relative to key threats. As the 9-element watershed management plans come to fruition, Pure Waters will begin to develop programs that catalyze water quality improvement projects in the watershed. Seneca Lake Pure Waters reinstated the Citizen Statewide Lake Assessment Program, or CSLAP, on Seneca Lake in 2017, thanks to a 3-year grant from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Pure Waters continues to fund a portion of this program with additional funding from the New York State DEC. Seneca Lake is one of 160 statewide lakes participating in the CSLAP program, administered by the New York State Federation of Lake Associations and coordinated with the DEC staff. The CSLAP program monitors lake water samples for nutrient levels and biological productivity as they change year to year. 4 teams of citizen science volunteers collect shallow and deep water samples bi-weekly at 4 locations throughout the summer, and samples are analyzed at a certified laboratory. Seneca Lake is ranked as mesotrophic or mildly productive, while many of the nearby Finger Lakes are ranked oligotrophic, defined as less productive and having clearer water. As you can see on this slide, in 2020, Seneca Lake was slightly better than its long-term average in some respects. Before the summer of 2021, Seneca Lake's 4 sampling sites were all in deep water, spread out north to south along the lake, focused on average lake quality changes over time. In 2021, sampling has taken place at one southern mid-lake location and 3 shallower locations near Geneva, Dresden, and Watkins Glen. These shallower locations are near stream mouths and are in areas classified as Class B water, as opposed to Class A water in the rest of the lake. They're expected to contain higher nutrient levels than mid-lake samples. This change, made in conjunction with DEC scientists, will help understand water quality differences within the lake and may lead to action planning over time. The primary focus of the Pure Waters Harmful Algal Bloom program is to find HABs and report them to the public, with a secondary focus on data collection. The HABs program started in 2014 with a call-in hotline and a couple of people chasing calls. It has now grown into a mature program in a few short years. In the summer of 2020, over 120 volunteers surveyed 82 zones comprising over 80% of the shoreline for 9 weeks, starting the first week of August. The volunteers provided 650 observations. Regular updates on HABs were provided in a weekly publication called Bloom Watch, and the Pure Waters website has up-to-date information during the bloom season. Note on the slide that we saw very few blooms in 2020 compared to previous years. In previous years, Seneca Lake has seen extensive blooms throughout the month of September. And for an unknown reason, there were very few blooms reported in September 2020, or for that matter, at any time during the summer. A total of 15 as compared to 130 in 2019. There was only one day where more than 2 blooms were reported, August 31st. And even then, there were only 7 confirmed bloom reports that day. In other years, an active day would result in 20 or more reports. By comparison, 2019 had 12 days with over 5 bloom reports. The 2021 season is basically over, and we are again seeing fewer HABs than we did from 2017 through 2019. So far, there have been 72 confirmed blooms. All but 19 happened on just 3 days, September 4th, September 16th, and October 6th. September 16th was a big day with 21 reports and 19 confirmed blooms, but October 6th was even bigger. There were 30 confirmed bloom reports plus bloom reports in the middle of the lake. During the season and on October 6th, blooms were reported in all quadrants of the lake. Summer 2020 was the second year Pure Waters participated in regional efforts to better characterize invasive aquatic plant species in Seneca Lake. The program is part of the New York State Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, or PRISM program. The Regional PRISM program is funded and managed through the Finger Lakes Institute at Hobart and William Smith Colleges. The macrophyte survey process, or rake toss, utilizes citizen scientists to identify invasive aquatic plants that are of concern. Pure Waters helps to recruit and coordinate 12 volunteers, while PRISM provides training. Volunteers conduct surveys every 2 weeks throughout the growth season and report results to the PRISM staff, who then collates, analyzes, and publishes the data. Findings from the last 2 years include no hydrilla, one of the most aggressive invasive aquatic plants threatening our lake. Hydrilla has been present in Cayuga Lake, where a multi-million-dollar effort to eradicate it has been underway since 2011. However, Eurasian milfoil is a prevalent invasive aquatic plant in Seneca Lake. Pure Waters is continuing the program in 2021 with increasing emphasis on locations that pose a high risk for potential hydrilla introduction. In addition to rake toss surveys, Pure Waters helped PRISM secure a grant to purchase educational materials and public outreach equipment to display at future Pure Waters events. Pure Waters has been monitoring 6 major streams for 8 consecutive years, providing important data on the quality of water entering the lake. In 2020, volunteers collected samples at multiple sites from the headwaters to stream mouths along Big Stream, Catherine Creek, and the Cayuga Outlet. Samples were also collected at the mouths of 3 other streams. In total, 51 samples were collected along the 6 streams from May through October for baseline and high water sampling events. Pure Waters' partner, the Community Science Institute of Ithaca, New York, performed the sample analysis. Each of the streams have unique conditions and characteristics that contribute valuable information to the monitoring program. All indicate impaired water quality with bacteria and nutrient levels of particular concern. Problems such as bank erosion and upstream runoff increase nutrient and bacterial loading to the streams and to the lake. Streams frequently fail to meet bacterial limits set for swimming areas. Streams with wastewater treatment plant discharges and those in heavy agricultural land use typically show higher bacteria levels. Shown on the slide are the percentage of stream samples that fail to meet E. coli limits from 2014 through 2020. Okay. Streams also generally fail to meet phosphorus limits. By far, the largest contribution of phosphorus occurs during high water storm events, as is the case for sediments and bacteria. Shown on the chart are the percentage of stream samples that fail to meet the total phosphorus limit of 20 micrograms per liter from 2014 through 2020. Ongoing phosphorus pollution in the Seneca Lake can lead to nuisance algae overgrowth and contribute to harmful algal blooms. High levels of E. coli bacteria found in streams are a sign of contamination from manure runoff, sanitary sewer, or septic system discharges, and remains an ongoing concern for quality of recreational and drinking water resources. Pure Waters continues its sampling effort in 2021 to better understand pollution in the lake and to bring about further improvement actions. Research is another key component of the water quality and HABS programs. In 2020, Pure Waters provided a $5,500 grant to continue research on Seneca Lake with our partner, Hobart and William Smith Colleges. The dock monitoring program continued its second year and is a model for similar programs on other lakes. There are 8 monitoring stations at key locations around the lake that gather important weather data and water temperature information every 30 minutes. Each station also has a time-lapse camera to capture HABs. In 2019, the cameras found about 50 HABs. They found none in 2020. That result provides additional confidence that there were not many HABs on Seneca Lake in 2020. Professor John Halfman's 2020 research report, which includes data from both Seneca and Owasco lakes, is well worth reading and is available on the Pure Waters HAB webpage. Pure Waters continued funding this important research in 2021. The project to update the Seneca Lake Watershed Management Plan in the form of a 9-element plan was initiated in 2018. Harmful algal bloom occurrences in recent years have heightened the concerns of nutrient loading in all the Finger Lakes. Seneca Lake Pure Waters took a leadership role with several partners to initiate this effort. 9-element plans are required by the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for preferred status in funding watershed remediation projects that are defined by these plans. The Seneca-Cayuga Watershed Partnership has representatives from both lakes and is meeting regularly to manage the project. The Seneca and Cayuga Lake Watershed Stewards drive the project planning and execution in conjunction with the contracted technical consulting firms Ecologic and Anchors QEA. Other partners, the DEC Finger Lakes Water Hub and the Finger Lakes Institute, are providing technical support and guidance. Cornell University and all the county soil and water conservation districts have roles executing project elements. A lot has been accomplished during this last year. Stream sampling and hydrology assessments were conducted to supplement data collected in previous years. This data has been incorporated into the watershed mathematical model. This model, which has been constructed and is in the final stages of validation, will aid the selection of remediation projects that provide most cost benefit. The watershed characterization information, including land uses, demographics, local laws, and other relevant data, has largely been updated. Public outreach included sessions with the Project Advisory Committee and a well-attended public outreach meeting. A quarterly newsletter is distributed widely to promote public awareness and interest in the project. Pure Waters anticipates that the fully updated watershed management plan will come together in late 2021 in a final version that includes input from public sessions, and specific plans will be completed by early 2022. As I just described in each of the water quality programs, we rely on a wide variety of partners. These organizations are crucial to the work Pure Waters does to preserve and protect Seneca Lake. Partners range from accredited laboratories that conduct analyses on water samples to county soil and water districts that conduct farmer education seminars. The relationship with the New York State DEC is critical to many of our water quality monitoring and pollution control efforts. The Finger Lakes Institute and Hobart and William Smith Colleges link us with us on research, education, and invasive species monitoring. Perhaps our most important partner is the Seneca Watershed Intermunicipal Organization, or SWIO, and Ian Smith, the Seneca Lake Watershed Steward. Our partners share our focused mission for Seneca Lake water quality protection and provide a formal link to the counties, towns, and villages in the watershed. In particular, the linkage with the county soil and water conservation districts facilitates partnership for boots on the ground projects in the watershed to control pollution at the source. Now I will turn the microphone over to Caitlin Fellow, our Association Director, who will cover education and outreach activities, as well as our organization's internal operations.
Thank you, Bill. Alongside of our water quality programs, we strive to educate the public, which is one of the organization's three main pillars. Last year was the first year that we developed and distributed our Lake Watch newsletter each month. With this continued effort, we've learned that sharing watershed and environmental news is not only a valuable addition to our ongoing work, which allows us to discuss Pure Waters projects, but a tool that allows us to acknowledge work being done by other organizations and call on our members to take action when needed by our partners in the watershed. On the screen in front of you, you can see a list of some of the things that our members have participated in over the last year. With our contact list growing over the last year, we now have a readership of up to 650 people each month, and know that we can count on our Pure Waters people to take action when called upon. Our specialized Bloom Watch emails continued through the unique 10-week HAB season of 2020 that Bill touched upon earlier in the presentation. We know through weekly feedback from our members that these communication points are highly valued, and our members become even more engaged in reporting HABs on their lake shores through these communications, sending pictures and reports through email. We also began to promote our business partners in Lake Watch last year, with 5 of our business members opting for advertising. We want to thank Clean and Green New York, Fox Run Vineyards, Interstate Heating, Hazlitt Vineyards, and Penn Yan Plumbing for their support. And as always, we encourage our members to support the businesses who support Seneca Lake Health. So take a second look at the group when you're looking for wine, specialty services, or an event space. With the help of the Communications Committee, we made significant improvements to SenecaLake.org, including an updated menu bar that focuses around our 3 pillars: citizen science, partnership, and education. We also updated specific characteristics of the website to improve upon our ADA compliance, including font size, contrast, and image captioning. We will continue to work to improve the site through the winter months and have planned to develop new web pages, including invasive species, partnerships, and our business directory. The Communications Committee also committed to the development of 2 new brochures, a Threats to the Lake brochure and Seneca Pure Waters Flagship Programs brochure, both of which have been broadly distributed this year at fundraising events, and most recently, a 2,000-piece informative mailing to lakeshore homeowners. In the fall of 2020, we conducted a membership survey and soon realized that many of our members, in fact, do not use social media of any kind. However, social media provides Seneca Pure Waters the opportunity to reach a larger audience that we would not be able to otherwise. Both Facebook and Instagram are powerful tools that can help us target specific locations, demographics, and even consumer-formed groups that focus on their love of Seneca Lake. Social media remains a priority to grow our reach, diversify our membership, and promote the care and stewardship of Seneca Lake. Last year, we reached 30,000 unique individuals through Facebook alone. Our partnership with Ted Baker and the Finger Lakes Daily News Radio has endured through COVID, and we have joined Ted the first Friday of each month via Zoom to discuss a rotating number of topics with varying speakers. Ted Baker regularly adds our event notices to the radio station's community calendar, and our reach through this media outlet is immeasurable. Seneca Pure Waters Lake Friendly Living program was launched in May of 2020, and we quickly decided to take advantage of the experience that other lake associations had with their lake-friendly programs. Zoom sharing sessions with 3 or 4 other groups quickly turned into an eager partnership with 7 lake associations that work to strengthen the lake-friendly living message and expand lake-friendly practices throughout the entire Finger Lakes. With months of hard work and virtual meetings, the Lake Friendly Living Coalition of the Finger Lakes was formed and hosted the first ever Lake Friendly Living Awareness Week in May of 2021. Lake Friendly Living Week included 10 webinars and guest speakers that taught a total of 500 Finger Lakes participants on native plants, landscaping for shorelines, sustainable vineyard practices, and much more. All of these webinars are still available to watch from the Finger Lakes Regional Watershed Alliance website with the link on the screen there. On April 28, 2021, the New York State Assembly adopted a resolution commemorating May 2nd through May 8th of 2021, the Finger Lakes community's celebration of lake-friendly living. We are really proud to be a coalition member and will continue to engage watershed residents to participate in the lake-friendly program on both the association and the coalition levels. One way to get started would be to take the pledge, and we encourage you to do that at senecalake.org/LFL pledge. So as you know, standard in-person forums were limited in 2020, but webinars on Zoom became the newest way to share ideas and is a great educational platform. Seneca Pure Waters held numerous educational webinars, starting with the State of the Lake with John Halfman in August, a rain barrel workshop with Ontario County Soil and Water in August, nuisance algae with Lisa Kleckner and Bill Rogie in December, a virtual farming symposium with the town of Geneva in March, and finally our Lake Friendly Living Week Sustainable Vineyard with Fox Run and Hazlitt Vineyards in May. I'm sure many of you were in attendance for our first ever virtual annual meeting on September 30th of last year, and the success of that meeting prompted us to continue in virtual format this year. In total, we had 415 participants in the Pure Waters educational webinar series last year, and will continue to promote water quality education through this platform. With strict COVID mandates in place, ADAPT became our motto of the year. It forced us to push through our limitations and realize new and diverse fundraising methods. In-person fundraising events were limited, though we were able to have 3 outdoor events before the weather turned for the year. Our Sunset Summer event at Zugby Vineyard was our first attempt at an event under COVID restrictions, and it was a great success. We sold out the dinner, drinks, and music event at 50 guests and raised over $2,000 that evening. It was also the first time we were able to present on our new Lake Friendly Living program in person, and we received numerous Lake Friendly Living pledges and sold numerous Lake Friendly Living yard signs. 2 Doug's Fish Fry to Go fundraising events in Watkins Glen proved valuable in talking with people who do not know what Pure Waters work entails. Of course, we love to see familiar faces who support our water quality efforts at these events too. We've learned immensely from our regional events in 2020 and have just wrapped up a very full spring, summer, and fall full of in-person fundraisers with the help of numerous watershed businesses. So each year we start the fiscal year off with our annual membership drive. As we planned a budget for the year, we reduced our fundraising goal from the year prior to consider the financial burden of our community members due to COVID. Luckily for our association in Seneca Lake, watershed residents saw the value that the lake provides and renewed memberships without hesitation. We had a great financial start to the fiscal year in 2020, raising approximately $20,000 from individual and family memberships and an additional $4,800 from our business memberships. This was more than double what the original budget was calling for. Our individual membership base grew from 535 in June of 2020 to 670 at the end of May 2021. 712 if you count business members. We believe this to be in part due to the monthly communication efforts that highlight the important work being done on Seneca Lake by our volunteers and the costs associated with the programs run by our association. A special business membership mailing was sent to over 500 businesses in the watershed with the help of Watkins Glen, Yates, and Geneva Area Chamber of Commerce. This was a learning experience, and we saw only a minor increase of business memberships. Silver lining of this experience was gaining an understanding that a single touch point is not enough to convert individuals and businesses to Pure Waters members. With this in mind, and thanks to the commitment of the board of directors and a handful of other Pure Waters volunteers, we have successfully implemented a new membership drive this summer, involving a lakeshore homeowner mailing to over 2,000 residents, along with a follow-up door-to-door program with 300 of our volunteers' lakeshore neighbors. To date, we have a membership base of 965, with 865 as individual members and 100 business members. This year, we have a goal to reach over 1,100 members, which is now well within our reach, thanks to the financial support of the Tripp Foundation, who helped us grow our membership this year with these new initiatives. The annual appeal was a similar success as the membership drive, in that the goals set during the budgeting process were exceeded by double, raising over $29,000 where we budgeted for only $12,500. This year's annual appeal is fast approaching, and we hope to again break our annual appeal fundraising record, as we have now 3 years running. The virtual silent auction was new to us last year, as we had to cancel our annual dinner and opted to host the auction online. Our volunteers sought donations from watershed businesses, and donations started piling in. The 32auctions.com platform was inexpensive and easy to use, and thanks to the volunteers and business community, the virtual silent auction brought in nearly $7,000, yet another fundraising record. As you can see, we've just completed another year of the virtual fundraiser and have had tremendous success. We've come to the end of the Pure Waters business meeting, and in closing, I'd like to thank all of our members who joined us here tonight and who continue to support the association's work through donations, dues, volunteering, and through daily action of your own to preserve Seneca Lake water quality. I hope at some point soon I can stop referring to this, but even through COVID, our supporters carried us through financially with their time spent volunteering. We broke through some previously believed barriers and have come out a stronger organization, having been put to the test. We continue to look for more volunteers, and there is a remarkable number of projects needed to preserve Seneca Lake water quality. Please consider donating your time as a volunteer with us, and contact info@senecalake.org to start volunteering soon. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for tonight. We first asked Michael Fitzgerald to speak at this year's Seneca Pure Waters annual dinner. Unfortunately, we chose to cancel that dinner, but felt that Michael's perspective as a reporter and writer of the ceaseless fight to preserve the Seneca Lake and the Finger Lakes watersheds against major threats was one we did not want to pass us by. Michael is a 3-time book author, all of which focus on environmental threats brought on by energy conglomerates. Michael has worked at 6 newspapers as a writer and editor, as well as a correspondent for 2 news services. He splits his time between Valois, New York, and the Pacific Northwest. We're lucky to have him to join us tonight to share his story of a decade of Finger Lakes environmental reporting. Welcome, Michael. If you'd like to unmute, you can take it away for us.
Okay, I'm unmuted and we can put my picture up there. Well, we can do this. Let's see. All right, Caitlin, can everybody hear me, I suppose?
We can hear you. And actually, if you want to see Michael's screen a bit better and see him, Michael, I don't see your face, only your name. If you'd like to share your video, you can do that. But for everyone else's benefit, just up at the top of your screen, there's sort of a view option, and you're welcome to just hit the view option that says only the presenter or the speaker, and you'll get to see Michael a bit better. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. And I also enable the chat function, which people may want to do too, because they can ask questions as I'm speaking. If they want to do that, that's fine. Turn off that other light over there. I have Caitlin, that was a very nice introduction, and I wanted to first thank Slipwa for the opportunity to speak and sticking with me through, as you mentioned, COVID, which we'd all like to forget pretty soon, but we'll see what happens. Initially, I was really looking forward to speaking at the Harbor Hotel for several reasons. For one, it's Slipwa, an organization that I belong to. I was even briefly on the board of directors. That's another story. Because it's a lot more fun to speak in person to a large group of people. Here, I look like, it feels more like, you know, you're doing Hollywood Squares and not something more. And you don't get much feedback. So I'm just going to pretend that when I make a joke like Hollywood Squares, that you all laughed, and we'll kind of go with it like that. As I said, I wanted to thank Slipwa, and I'm going to have to refer to my notes a little bit on some of these things. But I picked the title of Heroes and Villains and 10 Years of Environmental Reporting, thinking that I would be speaking to a large group and I would be able to pound the podium like you do when you give a speech like that. It doesn't do the same to, you know, shake this computer screen. So the talk I'm going to give is really not going to be exactly the same as that, because it's more like what we call in the you know, in the business an elevator pitch. Well, this is going to be sort of an elevator speech, because I have 15 minutes to talk to you folks, and I just turned my hourglass over, so it'll go off, and I'll be able to keep track of how much time I have. The title was chosen to be particularly provocative, and as I look at the bottom, I see we have 44 people now, so that's pretty good. We had 43, and then we went down to 40, and now we have 44. So maybe some people are joining in right now, which I hope. Titles have to be provocative. That's why the titles of my 3 books are The Fracking War, Fracking Justice, and The Devil's Pipeline. And they are, as Caitlin mentioned, all environmental based. I call them eco-thrillers. And I have a 4th one in the works that I'll talk about later if anyone's interested in that. But I wanted to maybe start with the whole idea that the whole idea of this whole thing of villains. As I get older, and we all are getting older, I no longer see the world quite as black and white as I did. I think I understand better now. You know, these companies that want to come into Seneca Lake that maybe are presenting environmental problems, the kind of environmental problems that Slipwa is trying to keep track of, and perhaps through various politics things trying to solve. But clearly, there are issues that you have to deal with, and there are issues that I write about all the time. I have no lack of environment. I could write about environment every week for the Finger Lakes Times, but my readers at the Finger Lakes Times would probably prefer that I not write about environment every single week, so I don't. I have to pick my shots sort of carefully as I go through it. But I do want to just start, I will start with the wellspring of my environmental reporting, which is, it's a very familiar, actually, I'll use the unfamiliar name and then the familiar name. The unfamiliar name is a company called Greenidge, and the familiar name is the one that everyone remembers, which is Crestwood. It's sort of a name that's fading off into history slowly. But Crestwood was sort of my indoctrination into not only in that sort of environmental reporting, but also small town community politics, and also how a company could sort of almost overwhelm through sheer power, dollars, whatever you want to call it. I was at the very first meeting, I have to make sure I got it down, I did, of a group called Gas Free Seneca. Well, perhaps not the very first meeting of Gas Free Seneca, but one of the very early meetings of Gas Free Seneca. And I sat in a room with about 10 people, and it was 10 of the most depressed people you can imagine, because Greenidge, then later Crestwood, had proposed that massive project to store LPG in liquid propane gas in salt caverns. They knew it was bad. A lot of people knew it was bad. And it seemed overwhelming that the public, citizens, would be able to do very much about it. And I remember several people in there said, the only way this is going to work is if we start filing lawsuits. Other people said, no, we need to organize. We need to create an organization that can go at this in a organized, well, organized, too many words, way. And how many years later was it before Crestwood finally was defeated and headed off into the Netherlands? So I want to talk about Crestwood as being kind of an archetype that you can also take to just about all of the things, all of the quote villains that I was going to talk about, and they all share a common thread. Common thread starts with they're usually from out of state or out of the area. They're almost always they almost always have advocates within the government agency of the municipality or the county or whatever it is that they want. Those advocates are almost always naive about what's going to happen. That was certainly the case with Crestwood when it came in. The Schuyler County legislature was so excited that someone wanted to build this big industrial thing on the shore of Seneca Lake that they overlooked all of the red flags that citizens, of course, immediately began to bring up. And so, so you have the two things going there that are usually out of state, which, by the way, if you read my column, which I hope you do, but if you read about things like this and you frequently see the appellation attended there that says an out-of-state corporation. So if I was referring to Greenidge, for example, I usually throw the word Connecticut in there because I believe that's where Atlas Holdings comes from. The third thing that you can sort of use as a test is if you have someone coming in that has a project like a Crestwood or Greenidge or others, and they don't like too many questions asked, that's usually a pretty clear indicator that they're doing something that they don't want exposed, and also that is going to cause problems down the road. And in fact, it goes beyond, they don't like questions. Pretty soon, the people who ask questions are the enemy, and so that's another one of the villain tests that I would suggest you can put on these things. And perhaps the fourth is that these folks are quite willing to use local politics to get their way. And as I said a little bit earlier, many local politicians, particularly in small towns, are not used to big corporations coming into town and wanting to do things. So they're either flattered or in some cases they're terrified. For those of you who followed the incinerator project that wanted to be in Romulus, immediately there were threats of lawsuits right away. As soon as the town board said it had questions about it, the developer immediately started waving lawsuits around. So when you add all of those things together, you come up with a pretty easy way to find an archetype, for archetypal villains, so to speak. And I'm just going to throw out a few names here and then talk about them. The incinerator in Romulus, of course, as well as Crestwood. I have to say that the Seneca Meadows landfill up north of Geneva falls into that category. For those of you who haven't heard it, the nickname for Seneca Meadows is actually Seneca Mountain because it's so big. And right now they're in the middle of getting into the middle of a political battle, excuse me, in the town of Seneca Falls by putting a lot of money into not so much directly into the political campaign, although there will be people who will track that, no doubt, but they're putting money into sending flyers to people's homes saying that Seneca Meadows can't continue and it closes, as the town of Seneca Falls would like, that it's going to cost the taxpayers there an inordinate amount of money. And that hasn't been shown to be true necessarily, but certainly the flyers that go out are saying that, and it's probably enough that it could tip the election, which means that the new town board might come in and overturn the law that was passed just a couple of years ago. Another one in that same regard is for those of you who pay a lot of attention to Cayuga Lake, which I noticed was in a lot of the slides just a few minutes ago, that salt mine project that Cargill has. I'm sort of in search of a good theme for the next eco thriller book, and I'm beginning to think that that salt mine underneath the lake might be just the right disaster, for me to throw in there. I don't know. In that case, there's an awful lot of questions about it, and most of you have probably followed that in other places. And last but not least, and there's lots of other specific projects that I've written about over the years, but the one that's the most current that I'm happy to see is getting a lot of attention from not just in the press, but a lot of attention from activist groups, is of course the Greenidge project. And the thing with the Greenidge project, I understand about the Bitcoin, the air pollution issue. That actually is one of the reasons I understand this meeting is tonight and not a week ago when it was planned. I understand the ramifications of that, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that all turns out. But I have always been most concerned about the hot water in that situation. I have gotten spanked publicly in the newspaper by Greenidge for repeating over and over, and it's a little like saying that it's a Connecticut-based operation, that the DEC permit says that they can have water that goes out as hot as 108 degrees. And that usually draws a retort from the manager up there, from Dale Irwin, who says, we don't put water out at 108 degrees. And my position is always no, you do, perhaps you don't, but you could. And maybe when they get that, if their expansion is approved, that water might be 108 degrees going out of there. And as you have people on Slipwa who are monitoring that, certainly, and I'll be interested to see what the DEC does even with the other permit. Part of the problem with all of these organizations that are these sort of villains that I'm talking about, and as I said, I'm a little less strident on that point, because I understand that all these folks, what they want to do is they want to make money for their shareholders. which is that's their job, and other people's jobs is to make sure that it's environmentally sound. I just look at it and think it's just so overwhelming, and it's so interesting that in over 10 years, what I've seen is that in each case, and one of the ones, any of the ones I just suggested, or a lot of ones that might be much smaller, not get the same attention. It's not the regulators that seem to be coming in and protecting or saving the day. It's citizen activists, starting with gas-free Seneca, and which is now morphed into something called the Seneca Guardian, which is doing a good job on this in many of the same ways. But it's interesting that the regulators themselves aren't doing the regulations. So, which I guess brings me to the DEC. I noticed that the DEC seems to be being quite cooperative on a number of efforts with, somebody just put a, oh, I'm trying to read oh, people are saying nice things. You should check the chat box. The regulators, in this case, the DEC, over the years have not impressed me greatly, and I've written that on any number of occasions. And I'm happy to hear that SLPWA seems to be working with them, particularly on this Greenidge project. I have been disappointed but not surprised over the years with the DEC, in that they haven't always followed through on the things that they said they would do. They haven't followed through on enforcing regulations. And I think actually that might even be the case right now with Greenidge, but I can't attest to that entirely. But that sort of regulation does get at all of the different people that would regulate things. In the early days of Crestwood, the Schuyler County legislature just waved the green flag for pretty much anything that Crestwood wanted to, formerly Crestwood Energy wanted to do. And it was disturbing to watch, because those were the people that should have been trying to protect, and they weren't. So I'm looking at my hourglass. I'm doing okay. There was another entity about the same time there in the Schuyler County called the Town of Reading Town Board. And I don't know how many of you remember this particular situation. I wrote about it quite a bit. I'm happy that I've never had to write about it again anyplace else in the county. But the town board of the town of Reading was hearing from citizens complaining about Crestwood a lot. In fact, every meeting, people would come in and they would ask questions. Again, more of those pesky questions that people ask about safety, about traffic, about all the things that eventually, in part, shut that project down eventually 10 years later. And at one meeting, someone stood up, a person who was actually going to run for town board. She later ran for the town board. And she started to ask questions about Crestwood, and the town board chair, whose name I won't throw out here because he's long since retired. He said that the town board would no longer allow comments during the public comment period about Crestwood, questions or comments. And to say I was appalled probably doesn't even come close. But so, of course, I stood up and asked the question. And he didn't know what to do, because he knew I was a reporter, and it sort of flummoxed him for a minute. And then he said no, that they weren't going to accept any questions, and they didn't want any comments. And so I wrote about that at some length several times, because even though it technically was legal in your state, in New York State, our state, to limit the comments section, you can't limit what people say in the comments section. And so that was just an astounding thing to me, that a town board would think that was okay. And if it ever happens again, please let me know because it's just one of those things that you can't make up. You can't make up those kind of stories. So I have 5 minutes left according to my hourglass over here. So I've talked about the villains. I probably didn't get into maybe the detail that people would like me to say about the villains. I could tell you offline some things about the whole Crestwood thing that would make your hair stand on end, and we can do that another time. But I want to talk a little bit about what we'll call the other side of it, which is the heroes. We all know that villains are much more intriguing usually than heroes, but heroes, at least in most fiction, always save the day. And by the way, if you read any of the 3 books that I wrote, in the end, it's good. Things work out. In the end, things work out. Whenever I try to make a list of things like this, I always think back to a speech I gave some years ago, in which I was thanking people for an award I won for my first book, and I thanked all kinds of people. And the one person I forgot to thank was my editor on the book, and my in-house editor on the book. And the reason that that's particularly problematic is the in-house editor on the book is my wife. And so whenever I make a list like this, I always say at the outset, I'm just going to throw some things out here. I'm going to give you some names. I'm going to talk about why I think these people are heroes, or in this case, strong leaders. And I also want to thank my wife for all the help that she's given me over the years. I start, of course, with gas-free Seneca, Joseph Campbell and Yvonne Taylor, who did their work. They continue to do their work. Not everyone agrees with everything they do. I don't agree with everything they do, but I have to give them a lot of credit for not giving up and being tireless in their defense, and not so much even in their defense as in their ability to sort of rally people around. That to me is arguably heroic. As I say, there's really too many names, even too many names for me to read right here, but I'm just going to go through a couple. One is the late Marianne Kowalski. Marianne Kowalski was a friend of mine, but we weren't the kind of friends that you would think. We were professional friends, and there were a lot of times when I published things that she had no problem calling me up and telling me that I wasn't strong enough on something, or I didn't criticize someone enough. Or that God help me, my facts had been slightly wrong on the matter. Besides Marianne, a couple of folks that are still very active. Steve Churchill. Steve Churchill, I consider to be sort of almost the father of regionalism in the Finger Lakes. He was very active in the early days during the Crestwood situation, and he was the one who started using the word regionalism every chance he got, speaking about the Crestwood project and then later about other projects. And he, of course, is still knee-deep in politics, trying to get the Seneca Meadows landfill closed. His colleague there on that same town board, Doug Avery, is another one. And then I also want to do a shout out to a friend of mine, a fellow journalist, a fellow named Peter Mantius. Peter Mantius and I've been friends since I moved to Watkins Glen years ago, and we collaborated on a few projects. But Peter is the kind of journalist, and this is why he's very heroic in this regard. He goes way deep into the weeds on all of these stories, to the depth that if you really want to know all the details, you read the story by Peter Mantius. And he does so at a certain amount of risk, I believe, because he's not working for a newspaper. He's working as a journalist and publishing his own work. And so I read Peter's stuff religiously. And in fact, sometimes you'll read something I've written and said, gee, I think I read something about that in Peter Mantius's column first. And you might have, because that's where I get some of those ideas. And lastly, on that regard, I wanted to talk about that the Finger Lakes Times has been very supportive of all the things that I've written about, everything, but environmental stuff. And they take us, when I'm writing about any of the arguable villains that I talked about before, I always give them a heads up. And I warn them, I'll say, this week, I'm writing about this situation at Seneca Meadows, or this situation at Greenidge, or this situation even over at Cayuga Lake. And I always warn them. And during the years I've worked there, which is a little over 10 years now, writing this column, they have never once ever called me up and said, we can't publish that, or could you soften that a little bit, or anything like that, which is astounding in today's media world. I can tell you that after having worked in the number of newspapers and the wire services that I've worked at. It's astounding not to feel any pressure in that regard. Last but not least, as the hourglass runs down, I think the real heroes, besides the people I've mentioned and many others certainly, are people who take time out on a Wednesday afternoon, October 20th, 2021, to sit in their living rooms on a Zoom call. Maybe in their living rooms, maybe they're at their in their lounge chairs, and listen to what an organization like SLPWA does, and also the volunteers of SLPWA. I think you guys are the real heroes, whether you're an actual volunteer or you contribute money to SLPWA, because your influence is amazing, can be amazing. And it sounds like, based on the presentations, which is why I logged in early and didn't take my dog for a walk, who is scratching at the door outside. I wanted to see what SLPWA 2021 was doing, because the last time I had checked in on this level with SLPWA was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And it was right after one of the former presidents and I had tangled publicly over something that had gone on with SLPWA. And so I'm very, very pleased to see the good work that you guys are doing. And I trust that it's going to continue. You've got, looks like a wonderful team. So we're going to go from there. So at that point, I think I'd like to just end my remarks. Thank you for your time. And let's all pray that COVID is over so we don't have to do any more Zoom meetings, because I do about 2 of these a day and they just drive me crazy. I don't know about you. I'm going to look in the chat box just very quickly here.
Mike, I think we're going to deal with those after the next presentation, and stick around so people can talk to you.
I bow to the president. All right.
All right. I don't get too many bows. Thank you. And thanks for being our guest speaker. And it's great having dedicated people like yourself and those others that you had mentioned out there protecting our lake. We know how wonderful and great this lake is. And it does take the little people to protect it, as you very well pointed out. And you were funny in moments there too, Mike. Just wanted to let you know.
Okay.
Since we're all muted. So Mike has addressed our lake's battles and threats from businesses, and they've been very big. However, I'd like to follow that up, addressing what has been and is the biggest threat our lake has ever had. And it takes those other threats that Mike just talked about and shrinks them right down. They're dwarfed what all those other companies, even combined, could do compared to what I want to talk about now. And that's a threat from Mother Nature herself. Some years ago, I attended a lecture at Cornell, and it was by a climatologist who thanked the lake associations, including our own, for what we're doing, because he was telling us about what's going to come as a climatologist, and that's more ferocious storms due to climate change. In the last few weeks, I heard another exact same type of warning from another professor, a Dr. Schneider, also from Cornell. She was from the Department of Natural Resources and Environment. And she mentioned a 5 to 7 inch rainfall in one day that occurred downstate, made terrible flooding. You probably saw the downstate flooding. And the folks around here know that's been happening in other parts of the country, but particularly the people here know about what happened in Lodi a few years back. That just some absolute terrible flooding. As all those professors warned me in that lecture, and now I'm warning you guys, natural disasters like that are going to just continue to plague us going into the future, and climate change is here to stay. In addition to those severe storms, there's other climate change related problems that are threatening the lake. With those excess nutrients like phosphates and nitrates coming down our streams, we're seeing increased weed growth, and it's really in serious abundance. We're also experiencing, as we've heard tonight, harmful algal blooms and a distinct change in all those fish that used to be around our docks. Folks, we need to get ahead of those threats. Otherwise, our lake is going to become ravaged by storms, green, and even poisonous algae, as well as the weeds that are choking our shoreline areas. Our answer to this, and I'm very excited to announce, is our newly created sediment nutrient reduction program, or as my buddy Rich has on our board would say, SNRP. Just a little background on this program. Way back in my youth, I used to frequent, perhaps more than I should have, a bar called Wet Goods in Corning. It was owned by a fellow by the name of Bob Kinner, who wore a French cap, and he's just the coolest guy you would ever want to meet. When he died a few years ago, being the cool guy he is, he left us $30,000 to preserve Seneca Lake. We're going to use that money, together with another $10,000 in a matching donation, to launch SNRP. We've assembled an incredible team comprised of some of our top board members, some incredible outside talents as well, and our lake steward, Ian Smith. And the purpose of SNRP is to seek grants and fund projects aimed at controlling storm runoff and pollution sources that are coming into our lake. We're fortunate to have the example of the Owasco Lake. To minimize erosion, they've been working with townships to widen and hydroseed storm ditches. In other places, they've created bioswale areas that work to slow down stormwater and dissipate nitrates into the air as nitrogen, thus keeping those kind of nutrients out of the lake. In a similar fashion, we've this last year supported an engineering study of the Keuka outlet, together with our friends at SWIO, the Friends of the Keuka outlet, as well as Yates County. Rather than having floods carry mud and nutrients down to the lake in the Keuka outlet, causing that massive weed growth now at the mouth, high water will instead be issued into old canal bed areas along the stream. Again, nitrates will dissipate into the air and not go into Seneca Lake. This example is but the tip of the iceberg. Furthermore, what we learned from SNRP will be helpful in achieving big money grants, combining it with the information from the 9 element study that I addressed in my opening remarks and that we've heard about in the program tonight. Some final notes about the SNRP program. A door is now open should you want to contribute to this particular program. And it's $10,000 matching fund. Let me show you how, just by an example, how your contribution can grow more than tenfold. We plan to use our seed money for 5-to-1 matching government grants that are available in public areas like road ditches. As an example, if you gave us $500, that would be evenly matched by SLIPWA, giving it a sum of $1,000 after that match takes place. If you use a 5-to-1 matching for public projects, that $1,000 that I just mentioned turns into $6,000. It's $5,000 plus the $1,000. So your $500 just bought $6,000 worth of keeping this lake safe and healthy. And can you think of a better return for your buck? And what's more, you're now going to automatically join in with those who have fought in past years to preserve this lake, just what Mike was talking about. If interested, just email our association director, Caitlin, through our website, and we'll get you all lined up for a matching amount. Well, that's the SNRP presentation, and we now have 10 or so minutes. We're going to go a little over. you can blame that on Mike. I hate to take any blame. Caitlin, can you let us in on any of the written questions that may have come up during our presentations tonight?
Yeah, so it sounds like Mike had some questions coming directly to him. I am not seeing any questions in the box directed at everyone. So if you do have questions, please feel free to use the chat box. We're happy to answer those questions. And if, Mike, you see some questions that were directed towards you, please feel free to jump in.
Sure. I just look really quickly here. We're talking, there was a question about the DEC. And the question is it this is in the chat box for those of you who are want to click on that chat. You'll see what everything's going on over there, including where my backdrop is. I should have explained to you that I'm on my floating home in Portland, Oregon right now. Anyway, the question is the problem with the DEC that it's a top-down management issue? Well, you know, I'm not privy to the inner workings of the DEC, but I am a professional observer. That's what I've been doing for my entire adult life. And so what I'll say is this, that the staff at various hearings that I've gone to, at the analysis level, I think the people that do the analysis work are good, but I don't think they're allowed to really push their point when they see something that's really wrong. Now, I'm just gonna, I hate to keep hammering on Crestwood, but that's where I was really the closest to seeing the DEC. And again, this was 9 years ago, probably, or longer. There was a hearing held in Horseheads in the middle of the winter, which, by the way, both my wife and I caught terrible colds, but that's another story. And it was an administrative law judge, and it was over a variety of issues about Crestwood that were being that were at issue, that citizens were challenging. I, as a reporter, always try to get as close as possible to the front of the room and the people that are doing the speaking and analysis and whatever. And I sat right behind the Crestwood attorneys. And I also sat on the close enough to the DEC attorneys to sort of see what was going on. And the interaction between them wasn't of people that are sort of on opposite sides of a question. It seemed like the DEC was trying to help Crestwood answer the questions posed by the judge in such a way that the judge would be a little more favorable to the DEC project, to the Crestwood project. At times you couldn't tell who the attorneys for DEC were really working for, I guess. So if that was any indication of what was going on, those were the sort of top dogs in the legal world of DEC. So you can imagine if you were a staff member working for DEC, what kind of pressure you would feel as the questioner here says. Is it a top-down management thing? And I think in that case, it certainly was. And I don't know if there's another question in there for me or anyone else. That was the one question.
Here,
okay.
Just the one for you, Mike. Okay. We have one question here. Probably Bill Rogie be best to answer this, and that is from Judith. What could be some of the reasons that HABs were less prevalent in 2020?
Yeah. Hi, Judy. So John Halfman really looked at this very closely, and that's why his report is so interesting on the website and comparing it to Owasco, because Owasco in 2020 had a lot of HABs, as did Canandaigua, as did Cayuga, as did Cayuga. So why, I mean, we basically have the same weather, we have all sorts of other conditions that everything looks the same, and yet we didn't have very many HABs. And the only thing that we hypothesize, and nothing is certain at all, is that the winds were high and in the right direction. So with the dock stations, we did note that the wind directions were a little bit different in 2020 than they were in 2019. And we know that the topography, like Long Point and just the orientation of the lakes makes a difference. When you get a south wind coming up the whole run of Seneca Lake, that causes big waves, and HABs can't form in the waves or anything. So that's our only hypothesis right now. Other than that, particularly with this year being low, although I did note anecdotally that at my house, at least, mid-September, third week of September was 7 days straight of high winds out of the south, which chops things up tremendously. But that's the problem with HABs, is that they surprise us every year. We can't seem to figure them out.
Thanks, Bill. I think Michael has something else to add.
I just wanted to say, I think you guys, I think Slipwa and Bill and your crew are doing a great job tracking the HABs on Seneca Lake. A few weeks ago, more than that maybe, one of my columns, I wrote about a trip I took 2 years ago across country. I usually drive across country every summer and go I go to New York, of course, and travel around the East Coast, visit everybody, try to spend time in the family cottage, which I'm afraid to almost go back and look at it. It's probably composting right into the ground. But in that trip, in both directions, I stop in small towns a lot, and I always stop, of course, in the local newspapers, because that's what my profession is. And honestly, every single place I stopped, the editors had either published stories, were going to publish stories, or were talking about the whole issue of HABs in their communities. And we're talking about Nebraska, Ohio, Michigan, I mean, every place across country. And at the time, I remember thinking how huge a problem it was. And just not 3 weeks ago here, excuse me, a month ago now, I guess it would be, here in Oregon, where I live, and I'm living in a floating home on a tributary of the Willamette River, for those of you who know Oregon. We had a huge HABs outbreak that people had never seen anything like this before out here. And here it is in a river, with a flowing river, with this stuff sort of going by like just toxic blooms floating by. So I commend you for what you're doing in the lake, and I understand what your president was talking about a few minutes ago about the sediment and everything. It's true, absolutely. But I think HABs is morphing into something that's we're gonna have to really take care of soon, and it's enough that I'm actually thinking it may be part of the next novel. I'm not sure. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in about the sort of the national perspective on this that Bill is probably well aware of. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for covering HABs most recently in your article. Was it last week? Yeah, it is astounding that spike in HABs in the one single day, and really across the Finger Lakes. It's pretty amazing. But thanks for, getting the word out to the public, because it's really important that people understand the threats of harmful algal blooms.
Right.
So I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. So we'll give it another second. And if there's no other questions, if anybody, Jake or Bill, have any other thing to add, then we can wrap up shortly.
The only thing I'd like to say is I'm hoping, we haven't scheduled it yet, but I'm hoping that we'll do a kind of a HAB or water quality 2021 results, either webinar or something in person, or a combination, maybe in November or so, just to go over, what we've seen this year, and do it in a bit more detail. I just gave a very brief overview, but we've got a lot more information about our water quality programs, what was going on this year, and particularly the HABs, and kind of drilling down a little bit.
I have one other question about the awards, and unfortunately, they were not from Corning Glass. We did a quick search online, and they're United States made, but not from our neck of the woods, unfortunately. Well, I think that covers it. So I want to just thank everybody for joining us tonight. This session has been recorded if you didn't get in until a bit into the presentation. So I'll be sure to have that up and available for anybody who would like to review. And just look for that notice that Bill mentioned to cover water quality programs and outcomes in the coming months. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.